as we break down the latest big Mets updates in Mets land presented by America's #1 sportsbook, BetUS. Make sure to check them out by clicking that link down below in the description. That way you too get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. I'm recording this throughout our live post-game show that I'm going to be cutting out after the fact. My audio listeners may be hearing this wherever you get your audio podcasts as well in our post-game segments. But we're breaking down the latest in Mets land as they sadly just lost Game 4 of a 4-game set against the San Diego Padres in a very dramatic fashion thanks to Jackson Merrill walking off a bomb there against Edwin Diaz. As we now look beyond that series split for the Mets, definitely a very frustrating series split to say the least. We have to look at what is next for the Mets here, as there are a lot of key updates with their rotation configuration and what they might be doing with their September call-ups on both the offensive and pitching side of the ball. So let's pivot into exactly that, and let's start here with what we have in Mr. Paul Blackburn. As many of you guys saw, Paul Blackburn took a 100-mile-per-hour liner from David Peralta just a night ago. They called it a contusion, which is essentially a bruise. The imaging was initially inconclusive, and after having further imaging, Blackburn had a positivity that he would potentially avoid an IL stint. Mendoza said it was still possible that he would be put on the IL, was expected to throw pregame today, did that. Clearly, it was enough discomfort to warrant Blackburn being put on the 15-day IL, and as a corresponding move, the Mets have called back, yes, Huascar Brazoban, the right-hander that they acquired from the Miami Marlins at the trade deadline, who has posted a 6.3 ERA across 10 innings with the Mets throughout that span. Has that been bad? Yes. Was Huascar horrendous in the Mets' 8-3 victory in Game 1 of a 4-game set where he threw 40-plus pitches, gave up multiple runs, and walked everyone their mother? Yes, he was, but as I told each and every one of you on the channel already, Huascar Brazoban was not going to be in the minor leagues long, and even if he gets sent back down not long after being called up here, the Mets are going to continue giving him opportunities to try to thrive in this Mets bullpen. They just need to make sure they don't give him too much of a leash to the point where, say, he gets rocked in another 2 outings and the Mets lose those games because of those outings. Then we have to look at Huascar Brazoban being the sore thumb as to why that happened. Brazo, for many of you know, I have spoken glowingly of him when the Mets acquired him. I love his stuff. He consistently is one of the hardest throwers among all relievers, not only in the National League, but in Major League Baseball. And when working right, definitely has some nice swing and miss stuff there for Brazoban, but commanding the strike zone is the big bugaboo for him that we have seen early on, and handling those certain leverage situations he has not done so great in doing. Can Huascar handle a high leverage situation with the Mets, or will he continue to be thrown out in low leverage? That is what we'll find out, because the fact that he was worked as bad as he was against the Padres when the Mets were up 6-7 runs in Game 1 was telling that he was, at least in that moment, sadly a little bit of a mental midget. Not to suggest that that's how he completely is, because I do not believe that to be the case. But Brazoban, who was given an opportunity yet again as a flame-throwing option for the Mets to consider in their bullpen, has been called up as a corresponding move. And then, as we're going to probably find out sooner rather than later, Tylor Megill is the likely candidate to be called up for the Mets for Paul Blackburn for at least one turn in the rotation. And the reason for that is Tylor Megill has been far and away the biggest standout among Mets starters at the AAA level, because Brandon Sproat is still getting acclimated, the young right-hander who has thrived from all the way from Port St. Lucie to AAA this year. He still isn't able to be ready, at least not for David Stearns and the Mets, to warrant the call-up, especially with Megill potentially only getting one start here. We'll see what happens there. Tylor, who not long ago pitched 7.2 strong innings, struck out 12, gave up 4 earned runs and a bunch of hits, and then also had a solid outing last time out there a couple days ago. Didn't go deep in the ball game. This was in part why the Mets needed him. So now the question is, when is Tylor Megill going to be called upon for the Mets again? Is this going to be Tylor Megill getting the opportunity for Thursday's game, the series finale there against the Diamondbacks, or is it going to be the Friday game to kick off the series against the Chicago White Sox? Now, I think common sense, putting 2 and 2 together, tells you David Pearson, who would be on normal rest for that Thursday start of series finale against the Diamondbacks when Pearson has been our ace as of late, tells you all you need to know. Pearson absolutely should be that starter for the game on Thursday. Considering it's a day game, maybe they have a slightly different viewpoint, but I say if it ain't broke, why fix it? Don't change anything with Pearson, his arsenal, what is going on with his every 4th or 5th day regimen. Keep him in that spot to pitch Thursday, barring changes. When Tylor Megill is inevitably called up, he will likely pitch that Friday game to kick off the series against the Chicago White Sox. And for everyone that doesn't love Tylor Megill when it comes to consistency as a starter, this is where you may have some comfortability knowing that at least he could be thrown out there against probably the best team imaginable for him to face. Knocking on wood, because as I say that, watch the White Sox absolutely tee up the Mets in that game, because of course they will, right? A 100-loss team is still going to probably win at least 1 out of 3, if not more, against the Mets, barring changes as we currently break down things here. But Tylor Megill, who definitely has had his struggles, and the big thing for Megill has been, one, it's that fastball. When he hasn't had high velocity, it has been flat, and it has been susceptible to giving up the long ball. 2, it has been commanding the strike zone, has been a commonality for the problems with Tyler Megill. And this season for Megill, who has a whopping roughly 11 K per 9 to a 4.2 walks per 9 in 47 innings for the Mets, has posted a 5.1 ERA and a 4.3 expected ERA, a 4.09 FIP, a 4.23 expected FIP. And I can tell you, from speaking with Julie as well, shout out to Julie Megill, Tyler's mom, who I have a great relationship with. Shout out to the entire Megill family. They're amazing. I was just speaking to Julie over this past day, and she was telling me how Tyler is really working on his mechanics quite a bit that we have seen in the minor leagues, and maybe a little bit more than what we have seen, and not necessarily years prior, but what he's fine-tuning right now might surprise you. One, you see him get called up and see how that is utilized at the major league level. Sadly, there's been a repetition with Tyler Megill, and looking like he has found-tuned something about his game that only works for a couple starts. Then he deals with an ailment either to his elbow or his shoulder, and he just isn't that same guy again. I hope that isn't the case here for Tyler, and I truly hope he takes full advantage of the inevitable opportunity that will be given to him in the coming days once the Mets officially call him up. But yes, barring any changes, Tyler Megill will be that filler put in this Mets rotation over Paul Blackburn until Paul returns from injury. Should things change, we'll talk about it then, but in the interim, that is the route that the Mets fully intend to go down, barring changes, as I just alluded to. So that's the latest there on Paul Blackburn and Tyler Megill. Now let's get into some other very unfortunate injury news for the Mets that has everything to do with the guy that looked like a potential clear call-up option. One roster's expanded because he's an infield option, not a corner outfield option, can play defense at second and third base, and has been barreling baseballs greatly at the AAA level. Brett the Met Baty, Brett Bonds Baty, however you want to call him, is now out for the remainder of the minor league season, as it appears, as he sadly took a hit by pitch after suffering a fractured index finger, and his timeline is now 4 to 6 weeks on the season for Brett Baty to return. Now, is it possible that Brett Baty could be an impact for the Mets down the stretch should the Mets make playoffs, and should he be back quite literally a month from now? Anything is possible, so I will never say never, but for Baty, who was looking absolutely brilliant, ramping up over the past couple weeks, looking like the surefire guy leading the way for the Mets to consider over other minor league options, now is no longer the guy that they will be heavily considering. And now the guys that are leading the way are a couple headlined by DJ Stewart right now, who has been thriving since being sent down. I was going to go with Eddie Rosario, but the problem is the Mets are already done with Eddie Rosario. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, I'm not joking. Purwo Salmon on the beat for the Mets of The Athletic earlier today. Eddie Rosario has already been released by the Mets. This happens after you post right around a 400 or so OPS across, I believe, 10 or 12 days in the organization. Eddie Rosario, who has fallen so far from grace as the 2021 playoff MVP caliber player for the Atlanta Braves, barreled a home run and tied the ball game a couple nights ago, and then DJ Stewart had a walk-off bomb. That was the day after the Mets had their walk-off victory against Orioles in Game 1 of their 3-game set over this past week. Eddie hasn't provided all that much since then. The Mets have been so unimpressed they already released him. Eddie Rosario now has the 3 Infinity Stones of being dropped from the Braves, the Nationals, and the Mets. All he needs is the Phillies and the Marlins to secure the 5, the full fist, the gauntlet that he's looking for this season. That I hope for his case doesn't happen. But Eddie Rosario, Mets legend, wishing him the best. He's already out of the organization. So what do the Mets have now as internal options? Well, they have DJ Stewart, who's been balling out at the AAA level, but the problem, DJ can't play defense all that well in the corner outfield. And do you really want to take DH reps away from Jesse Winker or JD Martinez over DJ Stewart outside of some very few pitching situations? No, you don't want to do that for the most part, right? DJ, Jackie Bradley Jr. has been fine at the minor league level, but is that a guy the Mets really want to consider? I will argue that with Michael A. Taylor just being released by the Pittsburgh Pirates, Taylor, who hasn't hit a lick at all this year, is a 50 WRC plus, doing his best Eddie Rosario impression. Another guy that has not seen the ball well at all at the major league level this season, however, provides elite outfield defense in all center, left, and right outfield positions, and can steal bags for you. Michael A. Taylor was a fourth outfielder target for David Stern's plenty this past offseason, and after being dropped now over the past couple hours by the Pirates at the time of recording this, do not be shocked if the Mets dabble in that category, and if they don't, I also wouldn't be shocked if the Braves dabble then after the fact, knowing Michael Harris sadly dealt with an ailment that we saw today. Hopefully he's okay, but we'll find out further word in the coming day or so on that front. So between Jackie Bradley Jr. in-house, DJ Stewart, Those are guys that, okay, make some level of sense, but then you add in potentially what could be the X factors here. Could Luis Angel Acuna finally be considered by the Mets? Does it make sense now? Acuna has been a lightning rod on stealing bags, playing elite defense, and what Acuna can at least provide for you coming off the bench is that late game defensive replacement should you call upon him for a Mark Vientos at times. Maybe even at second base if you want him there, or to come in just as a pinch runner. That is what you're getting in someone like Acuna, which I'm fine with, and if it doesn't hurt his potential development, I'm certainly not opposed to that whatsoever. But let's find out more there on Acuna and the status on how the Mets currently view him, because there's one man that has been balling out so much as of late at the AAA level. No, it's not the 26, 27-year-old Luke Ritter, who I know a lot of Mets fans would love to see given an opportunity. Ritter has been absolutely tearing the cover off the ball all year long, yet again in the minor leagues. But Ritter sadly just feels like a guy that the Mets are still going to be reluctant to considering, barring changes, because if it would have happened, it feels like it would have happened now, right? But Drew Gilbert, I know it's crazy, and I wouldn't have thought this just a couple days ago, but Drew Gilbert is quickly now finding himself in a category that the Mets may actually consider giving him a call this season. For those who have not been paying attention to Drew Gilbert's brilliance this season, let me enlighten you just a little bit, everybody, because Drew, after returning from a really big hamstring injury that had him out for the vast majority of the 2024 season at the AAA level, Mets top outfield prospect that they acquired in the Justin Verlander, Ryan Clifford trade a year or so ago, we saw Drew Gilbert have himself another flair for the dramatic, which was so awesome to see as he ripped an absolute tank that we saw, what was it last, I believe earlier today. Let me showcase it for you guys. Here we go. Drew Gilbert with a tank here, folks. This will be his third in the past 5 games for the Mets. Top outfield prospect Drew Gilbert, if he can really kind of get on a groove here for the remainder of the minor league season, this is a bat that can be dynamic. It is lively. He also has the moxie and kind of that chutzpah, if you, however you want to call it. I know I probably said it wrong. That could really fire up a team. And Drew Gilbert, you know, some people even connect him to, you know, some other really wily players in the past that have been in the Mets organization for sure. Even Nails, for example. Let's just not have all the, you know, extracurricular problems outside of baseball when talking about Drew Gilbert. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. But a feisty player, a dynamic player that knows how to run into baseballs, has a gorgeous swing, and can play outfield defense completely fine. Yes, when you think outfielders, you don't think that the Mets need a lot more options than what they have in Jesse Winker, Tyrone Taylor, Sterling Marte, Harrison Bader, and Mr. Brandon Nimmo. But injuries quickly change things, and for the Mets and for Drew Gilbert, this is a guy that I will not be shocked is heavily considered now from now up until they can potentially make a call up with Brett Baty's demise happening that we just saw as of recent. So that is the latest there on the Mets minor league status with Brett Baty and their potential next call up when they bring up a starter, when they bring up their, pardon me, not a starter, but when they bring up a arm, and when they bring up also a offensive weapon. Which bat do you think makes the most sense for the Mets to consider when rosters expand? Should it be someone internally, not an external waiver wire pickup? Let us know in the comments down below to all my replay viewers, and thank you so much in advance for doing that. And to my 1,600 viewers watching between live on YouTube and Twitter X, thank you so much for smashing that like and subscribe button, as you guys are amazing. And before we get into our final segment here that has everything to do on Mr. Eric Chavez and Francisco Alvarez, let's hear a quick word from our amazing sponsor at BetUS.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Alrighty, folks, let's get into this one. The big news that we saw a lot of Mets fans really pissed off about, even including a Mets fan, George, that follows me, and this is actually where I saw everything transpire today, was there was an article that had just come out from Tim Healy of Newsday that I'm not going to reference for you because there's a paywall, but there's ways that we can find out what we need to know outside that paywall. And as we bring, and this is not a slight on Tim at all. Tim, love your work there at Newsday. I apologize. I'm showcasing some of your pieces right now outside your paywall. Don't hate me. I love you. I promote you literally all the time. I think we're okay. Actually, I know we're okay because I literally have referenced your articles and I've showcased pieces of your articles for years, and we're good. So let's get into this. We saw Francisco Alvarez say he doesn't have faith, that he doesn't have confidence, that he feels like he doesn't have power right now. That's a problem. The Mets have been trying to approach Francisco Alvarez as a more level-headed, balanced hitter that can hit for all fields, hit for a higher contact, because the power will ultimately come. The problem here, and this is where I think a lot of fans have some rightful outrage to a degree, is that the Mets are trying to make Francisco Alvarez go against what has helped made him the great slugging catcher that he's been so far in his young professional career. Does this go in hand with injuries? 1,000%. I firmly believe that the only reason why there's this controversy with Chavez and the Mets hitting approach with Alvarez and lack of power has everything to do with the thumb injury earlier this season one, and then ultimately the shoulder injuries since then. Getting beat up every single time he's behind the plate. They're calling great games. Has definitely beat him up quite a bit this season, Alvarez. But expand on this a little bit further. Let's just take a look at some of these quotes here from Eric Chavez and the Mets. And I'm actually going to fix this real quick just so you guys can see it a little bit better here for each and every one of you. Let me see if I can do exactly that. Just give me a second. I'm grabbing the wrong thing there. Of course I am. Let me move that real quick. Let me put window capture there. And let's shift this over. Okay. All right. Apologies for the hiccup there, everybody. But as we see, instead, Chavez said the problem stems from Alvarez's mentality at the plate and mixed messages that might confuse him. Chavez referenced outside noise and voices. He said he doesn't know who that encouraged Alvarez to chase home runs to left field. The opposite of the more well-rounded approach that led to his success upon returning in June. See, this is where I have just a slight gripe in knowing that Alvarez has been tremendous with his slugging when pulling baseballs and has had little to no power whatsoever when hitting for center or opposite field. Have we seen doubles? Yes. Have we seen his natural power carry him at times? For sure. But slugging wise, it's been all pull for Alvarez so far this season. And I quote from Chavez himself. I've been trying to tell him for the past couple weeks he's a high performance sports car, Chavez said. He needs to learn how to drive the sports car in second gear because he's got fourth gear, fifth gear, and it goes. He just needs to learn how to pump the brakes a little bit and control all the horsepower. And I quote, and I told him, listen, you hit 25 home runs last season. That's great. I looked at your year and I don't think it was very good. There's a lot of areas you could be better at. So this is where I have a slight problem. Why are we kind of having this wordplay, even though I know Chavez didn't mean this in a disingenuous way, to suggest that Alvarez didn't have a good season, one still legging out 25 home runs as a 21-year-old rookie catcher is just asinine to me. Like, it's almost like you're putting too heavy expectations on him early. If we're going to label a 25 home run season, yes, he didn't hit a lick at all down the stretch when the Mets were post-trade deadline. He just completely tapped out, as was the case with a lot of other Mets hitters. I would rightfully preface. All the more reason why I'm kind of head scratching here is that even for the strongest of hitters, hitting is more about the long ball. And I quote from Chavez, everybody just wants to jump into home runs, Chavez said. We've seen it across the league. We promote home runs. Batting average doesn't get talked about. And I quote, I said to Alvarez, in a couple of years, you'll be the best hitting catcher in the league, but you got to learn how to hit first. Let's get you a proper hit tool and power will come. It's there. The power's in the bag. You got to make sure that the hit tool and the consistency is there. So, two things can be true here. I understand what Chavez is saying. I think we all do. He wants Alvarez to be a higher contact hitting, a more well-balanced hitter that can hit for all opposite fields as well, to make sure that way he will naturally have his power carry the way that we saw. The problem here is that by fine-tuning a young, impressionable hitter's game the way that you're doing with Alvarez has been so drastic that his confidence level with his power is completely shot right now, and you in part are to blame. Yes, when Alvarez first returned from injury, he looked fantastic with his hitting approach. Yes, the power wasn't as consistent there, but you'd have to wonder if it would have stayed stagnant should he have been able to get in a groove the way that he sadly wasn't able to because of ailments this season as well. When we evaluate Francisco Alvarez, yes, he's not an overly high contact hitter right now, but I would rightfully argue that I'm taking a Francisco Alvarez that maybe struggles a bit more with the contact, but is absolutely slugging for the Mets more than what we are currently getting in Alvarez. Because if Alvarez can reach a plate approach of having himself as a 250 to 270 plus hitter and the 800 plus OPS range every single year, showcasing 20, 30 home runs, that is what we would all love and truly admire to see. But you want to make sure you don't get too serious with a young, impressionable hitter like this. And Alvarez is all ears. But the fact that the Mets apparently have some people externally that have spoken to Alvarez that Chavez isn't even aware of tells you kind of the lack of structure that they may be finding themselves having as they are rapid fire trying to figure out, fine-tune in a short period of time how to get Francisco Alvarez right. Because yes, the power has not been there. It has drastically not been there. As a guy that has literally prided himself in his entire offensive approach on power, I'd suggest that's kind of a foolish notion to go about the approach the way that Chavez and the Mets have to this point. Will it work out in the end? It may very well be exactly that, and maybe, just maybe, this is going to work for Alvarez as he is more balanced than he ever has been in his career because he has so much to learn and thrive through. But in the interim, I think there's fair arguments to kind of be opposed to some of the notion that we're seeing here from Eric Chavez and Barnes with Francisco Alvarez. But I really want to know how you Mets fans feel about this in the comments down below and in my live viewers as well in the post-game show. I appreciate you guys greatly. What's your thoughts on the Mets' current approach with Francisco Alvarez? Because mind you, this is the same Francisco Alvarez that as we take a look at his offensive numbers, then we're going to get out of here, everybody, for our latest Big Mets update segment. And don't worry, we will be back live with Mets post-game coverage as soon as the Diamondback series begins tomorrow. Alvarez with 6 home runs, 28 RBIs in 72 games this season, has a .236 average, a .301 on base percentage, and we're currently looking at a 95 WRC plus. Mind you, Alvarez is just 2 below the 97 WRC plus he had last season, where he posted 25 home runs, 63 RBIs in 123 games, a .209 average, a .284 on base percentage, and a .437 slug. I'm sorry, but I'm still taking that Francisco Alvarez from a season ago every day of the week over our current view of Francisco Alvarez. So again, everybody, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on the current approach for Alvy. Do you think he's going to be able to get out of his rut and find that power swing again before the season is too little too late? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching for the latest Mets updates here on WardyNYM, and we got you covered where all your Mets needs. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on your way out. Thank you so much as always, and stay tuned for consistent coverage on all things Mets in season and off season long. This is your guy Wardy signing out. Have a great one, folks. And as always, let's go Mets. Peace out.